Well, good morning. I just wanted to welcome all you writers, and those interested in writing to this workshop with Matthew Foley. We're really excited from CCPL to have him here today. And let me just introduce you to him. If you don't know anything about him, I'd like to share some things about him. Matthew is an author, spoken word poet, writing coach, and creative entrepreneur in Charleston. He is the author of 3 books of poetry: We Could Be Oceans, The Typewriter Sutra, This One Breath. That's the latest one. In early 2017, Matt launched Contribute Your Verse, a writing coaching business that helps aspiring writers find their voice and share their creative gifts with the world. He also serves on the board of directors of the Unspoken Word, a literary arts nonprofit which organizes open mics, poetry slams, and school workshops. After 5 years in the classroom as an English and creative writing teacher, Matt recently left teaching to pursue his lifelong dream of being a full-time writer. And how lucky we are that he did, because he's here today. And we'll be learning about the writing life. So sit back and enjoy. Thank you for coming. And welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Savannah. I appreciate that. Good morning to you all.
Morning.
This is really great. I'm excited. I definitely want to start off on a note of gratitude, just thanking all of you for spending your Saturday morning with me. As we all know, there's lots of fun things to do on the weekend in Charleston, so I'm very appreciative of all of your options. You decided to be here. But more than what that means to me, I hope you take a moment to appreciate that you have decided to devote your time on your weekend to your creative life. I think you deserve a round of applause, and to the people around you. So please give a round of applause to yourselves for being here and prioritizing your writing life. And that is what we're here to talk about today. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here today. I was telling a few of my friends before we got started that last night I really didn't sleep a wink. I was so equal parts excited and terrified about how today would go. So I'm secretly really sleep deprived and just running on excitement and caffeine. So strap in. This is going to be interesting, okay? So let me give you a little roadmap of where we're going, who I am, why you ought to be listening to me, and what you'll hopefully take away from this workshop today. So the title of this event is The Writing Life: Creative Habits and Helpful Strategies for the Aspiring Writer. There are some other workshops going on today, one across the hall happening right now, and then at 11:30 my good friend Derek Berry is going to be doing a workshop you should stick around for, particularly any of you fiction writers. He's going to be doing a workshop specifically focused on revision, particularly for novels. So, and that's kind of the similar theme of the workshop happening across the hall right now. And so whereas those workshops are going to be very much zooming in on one particular writing project, like how do you take, like a finished manuscript and turn it into a book that might be ready to be published. Those workshops are zooming in. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to zoom out. We're going to look at the big picture of what does it mean to live the life of a creative person, a creative writer in particular, kind of on a holistic level. We're actually going to be talking about health and how to take care of yourself as a creative person today, which I think is incredibly important. I don't know about you. I'm 33 years old, and I would like to be joyfully writing when I'm 73, 83, 93. And so I've been trying to figure out what are the tips and the strategies and the skills I need to be like a happy 93-year-old writer. That's my goal, all right? I'm doing all this work for my inner 93-year-old, so he's going to be well taken care of, okay? So we're going to be talking about the marathon of being a writer, not just the sprint of getting one book done, though writing a book is obviously a marathon too, but we're talking about the ultra marathon of writing for your entire life. So this does beg a little bit of the question of why are you listening to me talk about any of these things? You heard a little bit of my intro. I've been writing since I was about 15 years old, so I've been doing this for roughly about 20 years, I guess. I have mostly a poetry background. The 3 books that I've released are poetry books. I've done a lot of spoken word performances over the years. I've won a few poetry slams. I've had lots of poems published in various places. I've been a teacher. I host a podcast about writing. I work in a bookstore. My whole life revolves around writing in lots of ways. But I got to tell you, for every one writing goal I've accomplished in my life, believe me, there are 10 future goals that I'm working really hard towards. I'm not coming to you today pretending to be an enlightened guru on everything having to do with the publishing world. I'm not here to share with you like the 10 easy steps to being a New York Times #1 best-selling author. I'm a fellow traveler in the writing journey life, and I'm here to share some notes with you. But I have been getting a lot of insights over this last 2 years since I started to Contribute Your Verse. So I do writing coaching, I host a podcast, I do an online course for writers. So I'm having endless amounts of conversations with writers. And my favorite question to ask writers that I talk to is like, tell me about your creative habits. I want to know like what time do you wake up in the morning to start writing? You know, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you from getting burned out? I love asking people about those questions because it's the day-to-day stuff that allows us to continue this work. All right, so that's a little bit of our focus today. Let me make sure I'm just kind of hitting everything I wanted to mention there. Okay, one other little introductory thing. We'll be getting into what I'm gonna call 6 practices for a positive, healthy, productive writing life. We're going to talk about them kind of in a big picture way, like sort of the philosophy behind them, but then we're also going to be working to apply them very directly to your writing life. You're going to get a packet in a few minutes that's actually going to have a calendar in the back for the months of, we got about 1 week left in September, and then October, November, and December. And we're actually going to be giving ourselves deadlines, setting goals with specific dates about when we going to be writing, when are we going to be checking off, finished projects, and we're going to be setting very realistic, concrete goals for our writing life over these next 3 months. So we're going to get some philosophy, and we're going to get some practical stuff we can really, really use. All right? Does that sound good so far?
Great.
Is that what you were hoping to get from this workshop?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's start with a philosophical question. We'll get practical in a few minutes, but I want to start with kind of a big picture philosophical question. Why do we write? I'm assuming everyone in here has in some way been called to be a writer in some way.
Yes.
And I want to get to the bottom of why. Why do we do this crazy thing of staring at a piece of paper, writing our emotions down on ink or typing into our computer? Why do we do that? Well, I want to give you a possible answer, and then we'll get to some of your answers. I'd like to share with you one of my favorite poems of all time, and it's where I got the name of my company, Contribute Your Verse. This is the poem, "O Me, O Life" by Walt Whitman. You might have heard this poem in the film Dead Poets Society. The late, great Robin Williams has a classic English teacher character, Mr. Keating, that recites a portion of this poem to his students. So with that question in mind of why do we write, let's see what Walt Whitman has to say about it. O me, O life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, of myself forever reproaching myself, for who more foolish than I, and who more faithless, of eyes that vainly crave the light, of the objects mean, of the struggle ever renewed, of the poor results of all, of the plodding and sordid crowds I see around me, of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest, me intertwined, the question, O me, so sad recurring, what good amid these, O me, O life? The answer, that you are here, that life exists in identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. Now, let's do a little, I used to be a high school English teacher, so let's do a little old school poetry analysis. What is Walt Whitman trying to say here? Let's take just this top portion here. In your own words, would anybody like to maybe share what is Walt Whitman getting at with this top portion? I know it's early in the morning. Take a moment, think about it. What's kind of the gist of that top portion?
The struggle of the human condition.
The struggle of the human condition. Would anybody like to add on to that?
Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, all is vanity.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. All of the struggles, the inherent suffering that always seems to come along with life, the heartbreak, the disappointment, all just the negative things that might happen to us over the course of our lives. All right? And then the central question, what good amid these, O me, O life? In the face of difficulty and heartbreak and all these struggles, where is there some good to be found in this life? And his answer, an answer I think most of us who feel called to be writers can probably relate to, he says that you are here, which is a great place to start. You exist. You are here. You have an identity. You are uniquely you. And you have a story to contribute to the larger story of what it means to be a human being. You have the potential through creating works of literature to give some sort of meaning back into the world, a world that is oftentimes seemingly meaningless. We have the potential to give meaning to it. Sound pretty cool?
Yep.
Yeah? So this is a big part of the reason I write. I think it's a big part of the reason Walt Whitman wrote. I'm going to give you a little packet right now that's going to start off with our first opening little exercise here, where our central question is going to be, why do you write? So let me start passing these out. Wow, this really does remind me of being a teacher. I hope I have enough for everybody. You guys probably want to pass one down to that door.
Yeah, sure.
And then I think there's 21 copies, so maybe we could share, or you could write, if we do end up sharing, maybe someone could write their responses on their own piece of paper. But as the packets are coming around, let me just kind of share with you what is this kind of opening idea. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes here, where I would like for you to write a very personal answer to that question, why do you write? Why do you feel called to be a writer? All right. I'm going to kind of make sure everyone's ready to go. Does everyone have something to write with, by the way? Are we short one? Oh, no. That was the last of what I had.
Some copies so we can do like.
You take this one and make copies.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Memorize.
Appreciate it. All right, and Jenna, this is where I'm going to need you to help me with keeping time. So let's put 5 minutes on the timer. All right, so I'm going to ask for 5 minutes of some quiet so we can write, and then we'll open up to some possible sharing and reflection in just a moment. So 5 quiet minutes starting now. Why do you write? And make it personal. a second, okay? And we'll open it up for a few people to share. Let's make it a quiet 90 seconds. Writing to a close, and be thinking if you'd like to share, maybe about 30 seconds. So I'd love to open it up now. I'd love to maybe hear from maybe 3 or 4 people. You can either read what you wrote or maybe just share out loud what came to mind for you. So anybody out there feeling brave, why do you write? Yvette?
Well, literature, the effect of literature on life is really important. Once something has been written, it can't be unwritten. Once it's been read, it can't be unread. And I feel that I have something important to say, and short of etching it in stone somewhere, this is the best way to get it out.
Okay. How about that line, like, I have something to share? Does that resonate with a lot of people? A story, experiences, a message of some kind? Who else out there? Yes, sir.
I write because I'm waking every morning about sometimes 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to write. And I normally write to about 8 o'clock.
All right.
Or sometimes later, and I have a lot of things I need to get out of my head, so I write.
Yeah.
That's the gift that I've been blessed with.
There you go. I think a lot of us have a sense of that we've kind of been given a kind of a talent of some kind, a kind of a gift, and the best thing to do with a kind of gift like that is to give it right back, to give it back to the world in some kind of way. Yeah. Maybe 1 or 2 more people? Jim?
When I was a kid, or still am a kid, but when I was thinking about what I should do with my life, it's the only dream that I've ever had that I have never ever doubted.
Ooh.
Wow. I like
Ooh.
I like that.
Does that resonate with some people?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, definitely does with me, for sure. Anybody else? Maybe one more voice? Yes.
To take readers to a place that they haven't been, and for them to experience things they haven't experienced. To share personal experiences that others connect to emotionally. To entertain and make people laugh through shared experiences of everyday life. And to gain insight and assign meaning to my own experience.
Ooh, that was great. Those are some great definitions. Yeah. I love that sense of being able to provide readers with insight on what it means to live a different kind of life. Maybe a life lived inside a different skin color, practicing a different religion. You know, what is it just like for all of us to move through the world and to be able to see it through someone else's eyes has so much power. I mean, I think that has an immense power for social change, right? So writers have an enormous amount of power. All right, that sounds great. So with that in mind, now that we've got a clear picture of why we collectively write, why we personally write, let me introduce you to these kind of our main topic for today, these 6 practices for the writing life. Now, let me share these with you briefly, and then I'll kind of explain what I mean by the word practice. So 1, write consistently. 2, write your truth. 3, be a student of the craft. 4, make writing your business. 5, do your inner work. And 6, take care of yourself. When I say the word practice, I was bouncing around different ideas of what I wanted to call this. I was thinking, 6 rules, 6 principles, and I like the word practice. It's something that kind of comes from the world of like meditation and yoga, like we talked about having a meditation practice. What I like about that phrase is it gives it's this notion that we have to put it into practice. It's not just an idea, it's not just a rule, it's something that we put into practice in our life, kind of in the form of an experiment. So what I'm kind of encouraging you all to do is to think about how you can implement these 6 practices, particularly over the next like 3 months, but then also over the course of your life, and to see how those might impact your writing life in potentially great ways. So I think we got some more copies of the packet for anybody who just arrived. If anybody needs some pens, or, well, actually we have some extra pencils up here if anybody needs them. And then so I consider, if I had to define what's really the purpose of these 6 principles, it's this. That the central goal of these 6 practices is to help you develop a sustainable, creative life. And I love that word, sustainable. You know, it means something that's going to last. So not living your life as a writer in a way that's going to get you burned out in 5 years. You write 1 book and then you never want to do it ever again. But again, I'm trying to be a happy 83-year-old writer. Now that I'm 33, I'm working for the next few decades of my writing life, and these are the 6 things, as I've talked with other writers, stand out to me as being patterns that help people live a sustainably creative life. These 6 practices also kind of break down into some important pairs. The first 2, in my mind, have to do with your relationship to the page, your relationship to your own daily writing life. The second pair has to do with how you relate to the wider world of the publishing world, the literary traditions, how do you relate to other writers? And then the last pair have to do with how do we take care of ourselves, lead a rich inner life so that we have lots to write about, right? Okay, so I think we're ready to dive into our first practice. All right, and this is going to start in maybe an interesting way. All my childhood years of Sunday school are about to pay off. There's what you need?
I need the little folder.
The packet?
I got lost in the traffic.
Sure. So, Savannah, right? Do we have any additional packets left?
I can get a few more.
Okay.
Sure. And how many, can you just raise your hands if anyone needs a packet? Is it 1, 2, 3? Okay, cool. I'll leave that.
It's a good problem to have. I was expecting 20 people, and we have more, so that's wonderful. All right. So Jesus shares a parable, I believe, in the Gospel of Luke. You might remember this if you've attended church in your life. It's this parable of the 2 builders, right? The wise man who builds his house upon the rock, and the fool who builds his house upon the sand. The storms come and the floodwaters rise. The house built upon the rock stays firm on its foundation, and the house built on sand gets washed away. These first 2 practices, writing consistently, and number 2, write your truth, I think are 2 great practices for building your writing house on a rock, not on sand. So we'll keep that metaphor in mind as we move forward. Cool? All right. So I believe that writing consistently, preferably every day, but we'll talk about how we might have to be flexible with that. Writing consistently is one of the most important tools for building your writing house on a rock. I'm doing an online course right now through Contribute Your Verse called 12 Weeks of Conscious Creativity. And I'm working with 5 awesome writers. And that's the main thing we are doing over a 3-month period together, is we are challenging ourselves to write every single day. And it can be truly a transformative practice. We'll get into some details, particularly when we start looking at our calendar, of how everyone's schedule is different. Everyone's responsibility is different. Writing every day might not be something feasible for you, but it's so important that you write consistently. Even if it's just Saturday afternoons are my writing time, then you consistently write every Saturday afternoon. It's that consistency that's so important. So why consistency? Few benefits. There's enormous power in routine. So I've been writing every day pretty much this entire year. And like I said, it's been really transformative. And it's the first thing I do when I wake up. Well, I make coffee and I brush my teeth, but after that, I'm writing. And I'm so locked in to doing that every single day. It's like that habit has been formed. And now it's like I feel off when I don't write. I even woke up this morning. I was up at 6:30. I did my 3 morning pages because I knew that if I got in front of you to talk about like writing consistently and I didn't practice it myself this morning, then I would kind of be a hypocrite. So I wrote 3 pages this morning before I got here because I got that power of routine established. It also really helps with your creative endurance, particularly for anybody out there who's interested in writing, a long-form project, a novel, a memoir. Guys, this is probably going to take a year, 2 years of your life, and then you got to revise it, and then you got to publish it. It's a long process, and there's so much benefit when you're writing consistently. You learn how to write for longer periods. You build up like those muscles to be able to write for 3-4 hours at a time, maybe even longer. You develop some creative endurance. It's also really great for breaking through that classic idea of like the writer's block. When you're just writing every day, you're more willing to just dive right into it, to throw a bunch of crap down on the page, to get things moving. When you're writing every day, you don't even have time to doubt yourself. You just write. You're just putting words down on the paper. You don't have time to doubt yourself. And then even, sometimes you'll be writing on a daily basis and you don't have some grand idea that day, but you're just putting words down anyway. You're trying things out. You're experimenting. But when the truly great, inspiring, wonderful idea that's going to change your writing life, like that amazing idea for a novel, when it hits you, you are ready for it. And you've built up those muscles, you've built up the endurance, and you're ready to bring that big idea into reality. Can you think of any other benefits for maybe those of you who write pretty consistently, maybe every day or 3 times a week? Are there any other benefits to writing very consistently? Yes, sir? What comes to mind?
It stretches your creative muscle.
What do you mean by that?
It stretches your mind that you can see things from, instead of 45 degrees, you might be able to see it from 360 degrees.
Ooh, I like that. That kind of reminded me, I heard a novelist talk about how she writes a lot of different types of fiction, and she was talking about particularly doing something like science fiction and fantasy, where you're kind of creating a world. She said that like when she does that type of science fiction writing, she has to write every day, but she has to stay in that imagined world, because if you start you start spending too much of your time in the ordinary world, well, you forget about this imaginary world you're creating. You got to be in that world every day. So I think that has a lot to do with it. So in contrast, going back to our metaphor of the parable of the house on the rock and the house on the sand, the writer who's building their house on the sand is only writing inconsistently, only when they feel inspired. I mean, I know we all have this idea in our head that like great writing comes from great inspiration, and it does, but it comes from great inspiration matched with the discipline you've been building over the course of weeks and months and years, right? So when you're writing only when you feel inspired, it's unlikely that you're going to develop the discipline or creative endurance needed to stick with the long-term writing project and bring it to completion. You're going to have a lot of great ideas and half-finished work, but the idea of actually finishing a book and getting it published is probably going to remain outside of your reach if you're not writing consistently. So, I'm not saying this as a harsh commandment, like you ought to write every day. It's not about that. It's actually like an invitation. I'm assuming all of you are here because you love to write. So if you're writing every day, you're doing what you love every day. What a joy that is. So this is a good thing. This is a happy thing to write every day. And then just to wrap up our philosophical portion, and then we'll get to the practical part. I love this quote by Anne Lamott, just talking about the value of a daily writing habit. I encourage anyone who feels compelled to write to do so. I just try to warn people who hope to get published that publication is not all that it's cracked up to be, but writing is. Writing has so much to give, so much to teach, so many surprises. That thing you had to force yourself to do, the actual act of writing, turns out to be the best part. It's like discovering that while you thought you needed the tea ceremony for the caffeine, what you really needed was the tea ceremony. The act of writing turns out to be its own reward. So if you've always thought about the idea of writing every day, or writing 3 times a week, or just being more consistent in your writing practice, know that there are great rewards ahead of you. All right, let's turn from, yes sir?
Can I add to your explanation about the consistency?
Sure,
Aristotle has this notion that excellence is a form of habit.
Ooh,
That
yes.
it doesn't just fall into your lap.
No.
That by paying the rent that's due every day in and day out, when
Yeah.
you look back at the end of your process, you will gain the thing that you thought you were wanting the whole way through. While
Yeah.
at the same time, you just ventured through the most miraculous thing to ever happen, which is the
Yeah.
creative process. Diving into the same waters as the madman, just being able to pull back a little treasure, a little nugget for everybody to hopefully share in, and then maybe raise the stake. That's
Yeah.
not stuff.
I love that.
Stake.
Yeah. So let's not be scared of discipline, Disciplines, we need it. We need it. All right. So like I said, let's go from philosophy to something practical. So I'd like for you to take a look at the back of your packet where you've got a calendar. We have 1 week left in the month of September, and then we got 3 months for the end of the year. I want us to take about, and I'm going to say with a lot of these little exercises I'm going to ask you to do, we don't have tons of time, so what we're going to try to do is to begin thinking about these things, but you might have to kind of finish some of the stuff at home, just for the sake of time. But I want you to begin thinking about what could a consistent writing life look like for yourself. For some of you out there, you're thinking, yeah, I could totally write every day. I could wake up in the morning extra early and just write. It'll be great. Some of you, your job starts at 5 a.m. That's not going to work for you. So I got a few suggestions for you. I want you to set goals you can actually reach. There's no point in setting a goal that's so unrealistic that you're just going to feel like a failure for not having reached it. So, here's a few possibilities. Maybe you write every morning, but just for 30 minutes. Doesn't have to be for an incredible length of time. You might decide you're going to write in the evening 3 times a week for an hour. Or maybe you decide I'm going to write every Saturday afternoon for 2 hours. So you can be flexible with this. So what I'd like for you to do, and again, we might not have time for you to fully think out the next 3 months, but maybe just look at the next week, like that last week in September. What could your writing life look like that last week in September, next week? Could you write every day? Could you write 3 times next week? Should you do it in the evening? Should you do it in the morning time? What works best for you? I want to give you just about maybe 60 seconds to start contemplating that, and you might have to finish it a little bit later. But let's have a quiet 60 seconds. Look at next week. When could you write? More seconds. If you're still thinking, keep doing that for a few more moments. Anybody like to share? Anybody set any particular goal? What's maybe that next week going to look like for you? What are you planning?
Well, I have found that I do better if I write early in the week at the evenings. So I put down Sunday, Monday, possibly Tuesday, depending on how I feel. Definitely write Wednesday if I haven't written on Tuesday, and then read Thursday, Friday, and on Saturday give my mind a rest.
Cool. I'm just kind of curious, why do you think I think I have a sense of it, but why does the early part of the week just seem to work better for you?
Because by working 10 hours plus a day, by the end, by kind of Thursday comes, my mind is like, just leave me there.
Yeah, I gotcha. I think a lot of us can resonate. Okay, so I kind of asked because I like that strategy. You know yourself, you know how you feel by the end of the week, and so writing earlier in the week works better for you. So I love those kind of insights. Maybe one other person, ma'am?
I
I write usually 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night. I usually do my research in the morning, and if I don't have any research to do, then I do 2 hours. And I finish 2 novels and 1 children's book.
Yes. One other idea I just want to add real quick is also think about times during the week where you might want to spend an hour revising your work. You might want to do editing time. And that might be good when you're maybe like later in the week, you maybe feel a little brain dead and you don't have maybe the mental energy to write something new and fresh and like new ideas, but maybe you can spend an hour editing a little later on the week. Just an idea. All right, so we're going to have to move kind of quickly through some of these exercises and some of our calendar planning, but you can do some more of it at home. All right, let's talk about our second practice here, writing your truth. I know this sounds like a little bit of a cliche, but I'm going to hopefully break it down enough so it's actually some practical advice. I'm going to share 2 definitions with you going back to our the idea of the parable of the house on the rock and the house on the sand. So a writer building their house on a rock develops an authentic voice to explore themes that are meaningful to them based on their personal experiences. In contrast, a writer building their house on sand adopts an inauthentic voice to explore themes they think are currently popular but are not based on their own personal experiences. Now, in case you think I'm being a little judgmental there, please understand I know I have been both of these writers at various times in my life. Like I have a long background in the world of slam poetry. And if you've ever been to a poetry slam or spent some time in that world, there's definitely times where, you know, like certain performance styles tend to be more popular with audiences. Usually if you scream a lot, like that does really well. And then also like certain themes that like tend to work. And so I know like when I was really in the midst of like my kind of the height of my poetry slam career, I definitely wrote some poems that weren't the most authentic thing I was feeling, and I definitely adopted like a performance style. I definitely was like a lot louder than I probably maybe needed to be, but I thought that was what would work in that moment, right? This is always going to be tempting, you know? Suddenly, you know, when Twilight hit a few years ago, think about how many authors suddenly decided that writing vampire romances was their life calling, right? There's always going to be trends and things that are popular, and it's fine to write those things. It's fine. And we'll talk about how we sometimes need to be strategic about things going on in the publishing world. But if we're thinking about a lifetime of enjoying our writing, we need to orient ourselves to this. We need our writing to feel authentic. We need to base it off of actual like things we really feel. There's a lot of truth to that old adage of write what you know. We don't necessarily have to take that literally. You know, like I'm a male born in South Carolina. It's not like every piece of writing I do is about a male set in South Carolina, right? We don't have to take it like too seriously. But I need to write about things that on some level I've been through, that I understand. Maybe I'm a science fiction writer and my stories are set on some fantastical alien planet. But if I've experienced a lot of loss in my life, then maybe I explore what loss looks like on some strange alien planet, right? But there's a core of essential personal truth that I'm exploring, maybe even if I'm setting it in some weird place with weird characters, right? So, again, to start getting a little practical, how do we really start getting in touch with writing that really feels true to us? I think this is where like a consistent journaling practice can be a really great way to get in touch with a really natural, authentic voice for yourself. Like if you're really struggling to know kind of what to write about or how to sound like your real self on the page, try journaling. Try writing for just, I like this phrase, writing for an audience of one. Yes, you're going to revise it, and yes, you're going to get it ready for the publishing world and for other people to read. But when you're writing your rough draft, write it for yourself. Or I also sometimes like when writers maybe have this idea of like they're writing it for one person. Like they have a friend that they're writing this book for that one person, because that's the only person that matters for them in their process. I think that's some great strategies for getting in touch for what is truthful for you, okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So with this next kind of exercise, this may take more reflection that's possible, like in 60 seconds. But I want you to think about maybe 3 possible personal truths that you feel called to explore in some future writing. I know we have a lot of different types of writers out here today, maybe poets, novelists, short story writers, memoirists, all different kinds of people. But if you had to start thinking about your life, thinking about your personal experiences, your deeply held beliefs, your triumphs, your tragedies, social issues you've been affected by, emotions you need to get off your chest, I'd like for you to think, maybe right now, maybe a little bit later, could you identify 3 personal truths that you need to be writing about? And then what you could do is start setting yourself some deadlines. Like by November 1st, I really want to write about a loss I've experienced. So by November 1st, I'm going to start a short story exploring loss, because that's something I've been through and I want to explore that. So I'm going to give you kind of another just quiet 60 seconds, see if any 3 personal truths pop into your mind, and then start thinking, how could you set yourself a concrete deadline to begin a piece of writing that will touch on those truths? So take a moment.
Can you give us a quick example?
Of what do you
Like a personal truth.
Like I said, maybe like loss, you know, like I went through like a divorce several years ago, and that's been a big part of my writing life for the last 2 years, and I was very scared to write about that first, but it was a personal truth. I knew I needed to get out on the page, right? So maybe I would challenge myself to write more authentically about that, as an example. I know this one's a little more abstract, but let's just take maybe another just quiet 30 seconds. You might have to think about it at home. Let me open it up for a moment. Did a possible truth come to anybody that you feel like, that's something I ought to be writing about? I need to start writing about that. Do you have something?
It revolves around like something that we all kind of can touch base on, which is like fear and suffering and like the origins of that. And basically dealing with our own mortality, but also our inadequacy to do anything in face of the mortality. And then, hopefully being able to explore concepts that unravel from that, which is like, wanting to have everything, wanting to expel everything, and everything that happens in between.
Yeah. That's a big undertaking, sure. But if you find ways to personalize all those things, that you're talking about your fears, or maybe you're taking that and you're creating a character who's facing a similar fear, that could be enormously powerful. All right, for the sake of time, let's keep it rolling. All right. Here's a common image we see around the country and around the world about every May and June, people graduating. I heard the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson on a podcast recently said that one of the biggest tragedies in our society is that a lot of people are under the impression that when this moment happens, that they throw their graduation cap up into the air, that like their relationship with learning has now stopped. And I think the truth of the matter is, particularly for creative people, for writers, no matter our level of formal education, writers must remain lifelong learners. And so these next 2 practices are going to have to do with kind of 2 aspects of the writing life: the craft side of things, and then the publishing business side of things. So let's dive into the craft aspect of it, of how do we improve our technique, how do we improve our style, all those kinds of matters. There's a big question right now for a lot of writers: to MFA or not to MFA? Are we all familiar with what an MFA program is? Like a graduate level creative writing degree. I think it's something a lot of younger writers in particular kind of wrestling with. Like, do I go get a degree in creative writing? Is that worth it? And there's a lot of issues back and forth, or arguments back and forth. Personally, I have not done an MFA program. I can't really afford one at the moment. I would love to experience it. But I want to kind of offer a third option to kind of step outside this conundrum of, how much formal education do we need? I want to suggest that kind of no matter your relationship to universities or, formal education, there are parts of a writer's education that you should be seeking no matter whether you're giving your money to a university or not. So several of the things that people will often experience, like in an MFA program, they're going to be exposed to a lot of great authors and texts. They're going to be studying lots of new styles and forms to expand their technique. They're going to be getting constructive feedback from writers that they trust. They're going to be joining with a community of fellow writers, fellow students, and they're going to have professors, mentors to guide their development. If you would like to seek out all of those elements in a graduate level program and to get a degree in creative writing, awesome, good for you, go do it. But I would also like to suggest to you that you can find all of these things outside of universities as well. You might have to put a little more work into it, you might have to seek these things out a little bit more on your own, but you should be engaging and seeking out all these elements no matter whether you're giving your money to a college or not. So let me give you some kind of concrete steps about how you can be a better student of the craft of writing. You gotta be a reader. I'm assuming you are, but writers gotta read. And that's where a lot of us got our start. That was our initial passion for wanting to write, is that we fell in love with reading. And we gotta keep that up throughout our lives. There's so much value in, of course, reading inside your genre. Like if I'm a poet, I better be reading some poetry, right? And I need to be reading good poetry. I need to be reading poetry that challenges me to be better. There's also a lot of value in reading outside of your genre. Like, I love reading a lot of books on spirituality and psychology and things like that. Not because I want to learn how to write prose like a psychologist would write, but I'm getting amazing ideas from that I'm maybe then working into my poetry or fiction project I'm working on. So reading inside and outside of your genre. Seeking out writing prompts to experiment with new forms and expand your technique. There's a lot of great resources online, Instagram pages and websites that are all about, just new kind of different theme to write about, or different forms to experiment with. So useful to just widen your array of strategies. Find a small group of, I love this term, beta readers, of people to read your work, who are willing to carefully read your work. And this is an important part, who are skillful at providing you with useful feedback. Not every one of your friends who is a writer is necessarily skilled at giving you constructive feedback, for a variety of reasons. They might kind of be not a great person and they're mean. They might also have very different writing values than you. Maybe you just have two totally different styles, and when they're looking at your work, they just can't even understand what you're going for because they just have a totally different set of values. So it's important to find fellow writers, peers that are kind of sympathetic to your style, to some of the themes you're exploring. And again, who are skillful at giving you feedback you can actually use. Go to local writing events. You're already doing it. And network with fellow writers who inspire you. You need to be connected to things going on in your city and your state. Go to open mics. Go to book festivals. Meet people. It's so, so important. I mean, my life has been so vastly improved by great writing friends. It's one of the best things about my life. Most of my friends are writers. They're great people. And then finally, seek out mentors who know more than you do and listen to them. So you might take a look at this list and ask yourself, is there anything that I'm kind of missing from my current life as a writer? I'll identify one. I have a lot of great writing peers. I don't necessarily have a lot of great writing or tons of writing mentors in my life. I'm actually I would love to find like some more like kind of older, more experienced writers that could kind of mentor me a little bit more. I'm looking for that right now. So you might, one of these might jump out at you. Any other ideas? Is there anything else you might do that improves your technique, your craft? Yvette?
You can sometimes, when it comes to taking classes like formal education, you don't necessarily have to get into a program. You can just find a class like at Trident Tech and take it. Or at the College of Charleston, and they'll let you kind of audit the class.
Absolutely. Or like workshop series that are going on. I know Itinerant Literary is an awesome local bookstore, and I know they have a fiction writing workshop. I think it's like a 4-part series, so it's very intensive.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know, if you don't have the money or the resources to sign up for like a 2-3 year graduate level course or program, you know, take like a workshop series, something like that. Any other ideas from our collective wisdom how to improve our craft?
Just have a quick.
Yes, sir.
You go
This
first.
itinerant literate, what was it you were talking about?
They're a local bookstore. They started off as a bookmobile, like they kind of had like a Airstreamer, like a bookmobile, and then they just got like a building, and so it's in North Charleston in Park Circle.
Okay.
And they host a lot of really cool events, including that workshop series.
Cool.
And a
Yes,
really
ma'am.
good book and wine club.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It's both? Oh, yeah. I'm
I know there's a few children in the room. They have headphones on. Yeah. Get drunk with writers. It's a great idea. That's my off the record suggestion. Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
As a fiction writer, what I do to improve my characters is, like you, I like to read a lot of about psychology,
Yeah.
study sociology, and also I read about anthropology. And I find that when I get a character, what I've learned from those 3 things helps me with learn from the character and write the character better.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's going back to the idea of research. We gotta read to learn about better sentence structure, but we read to learn more about the world and all that kinds of good stuff. So, again, I'm going to turn you to. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just one quick thing.
Yeah.
Tell everybody that you're writing, because you'll be amazed. You will find someone that you didn't know was also writing.
Yeah.
And it'll expand your knowledge because they'll have information that you didn't know.
Yes. One of my favorite suggestions to start kind of owning the fact that you are a writer more is the next time you go to like a dinner party or meeting some strangers and they ask you, oh, what do you do? Start saying, I'm a writer. Just start owning it. It'll do some good things for you, and it'll start up those exact same kind of conversations. You never know who you might meet when you start introducing yourself as a writer. So, once again, we're going to go to this idea of maybe picking 3 goals. Maybe there's something we mentioned over the last few minutes. Maybe there's like a goal up here. Could you set 3 goals for yourself over the next 3 months? Maybe it's stuff you're going to read, events you're going to seek out. You might not know the details yet, but just things you want to seek out over the next 3 months. Could you set those 3 goals and then maybe pick some deadlines to put those into action? So again, let's have a kind of a quiet 60 seconds. Did anybody set a goal that might be worth sharing? Anything interesting? Josh?
I said to engage with more people because I don't like talking to people. So I need to engage with more people and own it more.
Yeah.
Try to network.
Yeah.
Attend more events And then I said budget better to be able to attend more events and take classes.
That's a really good one.
Yeah. I struggle with budgeting too, yes. Jeff?
I'm gonna reach out to college friends that I used to take workshops with and haven't been in contact with, and share some of my new work.
I love it. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Let's shift gears to another type of learning we need to be doing, moving away from the literary craft side of things to the more business side of things. How do we conduct ourselves as an author? It is often said that successful writers treat writing like it's their job, which I think is true, but I like to shift that phrase to the idea that you should treat writing like it's your business. Because to be honest, particularly in the 21st century, being a writer is much more like being an entrepreneur than it is like being like an employee. It's not just like showing up at a job. Like, if you are a professional writer, yeah, you might have an agent and some editors and a publisher, or some deadlines to meet, but you're essentially the boss and the employee. So good luck with that. But there's a lot of entrepreneurial business type skills that writers are increasingly needing to know to be successful in the 21st century, which is of course a little ironic since most of us who are drawn to the arts have terrible business skills, right? When we signed up for college, we walked right past the business school and said, the arts and the humanities, right? So many of us don't have a great skill set around business and the money side of writing, right? So we need to educate ourselves. So let me share a few principles, and then we'll break it down into some specifics. There is this sense of acting like a professional. Just that sense of when you show up to your writing desk, do treat it like it's your job. Like this is your livelihood. So act like a professional. You might also want to think about acting like a professional in the sense of, start getting like business cards made up. Next time you're at that dinner party, you're Josh, you're overcoming your shyness and talking to people, hand them your business card. Start thinking about getting like author photos, hire a photographer. We'll talk about some of those details. Because if you get invited to do something like a workshop or come to a poetry reading, they're going to ask you for your bio and to send a picture. You don't want to be sending them a picture, like a selfie you took 5 seconds ago. You want like a professional photo, right? So start acting like a professional. Okay. Know the value of your work. As a poet, specifically as like a spoken word poet, I do a lot of events, right? And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over the years where it's like, sure, I'd love to come read poems at your event. How much are you paying? And they write me back, well, we can't really pay poets, and this whole question of negotiating your value, a lot of us tend to, because again, we're creative people and we have terrible business skills for the most part, a lot of us don't know how to put a price tag on the value of our work. I have this some piece of writing and someone, maybe there's an opportunity to share it somewhere. It's okay to ask, how much can you pay me for being there? And if they say, oh, we don't really have a budget for that, you have the right to say, no, I can't afford that. I can't take time out of my life to come share my poem if you're not going to pay me. But those are hard things to do. So start thinking about the value of your work, and that's great stuff to have writing peers to bounce ideas off of. I'm really good friends with Marcus Amaker, the city's poet laureate, and I can't tell you how many times I'll maybe ask to go to a school and do a workshop, and I'll text Marcus and I'll be like, Marcus, how much do you charge for like a school workshop? And he'll send me a figure, and then I'll usually tell them about half of what Marcus said because he's the poet laureate and I'm not. So, but you got to figure those things out. Study the business of being an author. There's a lot of great books and podcasts out there. One of my favorite people in this world is a woman named Joanna Penn. She does a podcast called The Creative Pen. I have a book of hers called Business for Authors. Imagine that. And she's really emphasizing, or puts an emphasis on independent authors that choose to self-publish, to publish and market and distribute their books on their own, which is definitely possible, but it takes a lot of homework. So learning some of those kind of business skills. Speaking of which, learn all about the options for releasing your work, including traditional and self-publishing. There's been a lot of shame in the writing world over many decades about self-publishing your work, where a lot of people feel like it's like a defeat of some kind, that you're not a real writer if you self-publish your work. But a lot of those attitudes are changing. In fact, there's enormously successful writers who are self-publishing their work. Sometimes an author might start off by self-publishing a book. It actually really blows up, and then a publisher will want to publish it. So don't think of self-publishing as a defeat. There's actually a lot of great options out there for you. Consider developing your author platform. That's things like having an author website, an author Facebook page, an Instagram account, a Twitter account. I have all those things, and sometimes I hate it because it's too much time on social media. But to go and have those things in place so that when you do have a book come out, you have people that are already following you, and you have ways to connect with people that are outside of your like physical community, right? And there's great conversations among writers happening on Twitter. Josh, what was that thing I think you were telling me about? It was like a pitch day on Twitter, right?
Oh, yeah.
Something like that?
Manuscript wish list.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or, like literary agents will kind of ask for, ideas from writers and things like that. It's all happening on Twitter, and you got to know the right hashtag and all that kind of stuff. So pay attention to that kind of stuff. And then finally, I'll suggest talk to other writers about their business and financial experiences. Like I say, I call up my buddy Marcus Amaker all the time. Hey, man, how much should I charge for something like this? And it's great just getting a little feedback. The practical steps, I think I actually talked about a good many of these as I was on the previous slide. Let me just kind of go through. I mentioned a lot of these, I think, already. If you haven't ever checked out The Writer's Market, that's a very classic book that's published every year that has listings of pretty much every literary magazine, publisher, lots of listings of literary agents and all that kind of stuff. Another great website is called Publisher's Lunch that is always posting news and insights from the publishing world, kind of trends that are going on. It's very important to try to pay attention to these things as we're also finding our authentic voice, but balancing that with, what is going on in the publishing world? Is there something, I could take something that's authentic to me, but I can pitch it in a way that might seem popular in the current literary marketplace. So it's kind of a balance between those two things. So I think I mentioned most of these. Any ideas from the group? Anything from our collective wisdom? Things you can do to improve your business savvy as an author? Jen?
You have 20 minutes.
Thank you. Jen is my timekeeper. I think we're on practice number 4. I think we're doing pretty good. Yes, sir.
What about non-disclosure agreements to protect your intellectual property, especially when you're sending your work and your manuscripts flying around to editors and things like that? Is that necessary? Or how does that work? Or do you just...
I don't have much experience with that personally. Does anybody have any insights on that? Derek?
Yeah, so once you write something, it's technically copyrighted for you. As soon as you write it, yeah. Microsoft Word in particular saves things so you can go back and show the date. It's not really something you should worry about too much because it doesn't really happen that often. You just need to find people you trust. There are for sure online sources that might take your writing. I think for the most part it's not something you super have to worry about. If you are super worried about it and need it in written form, you can mail your writing to yourself and establish that. But in general, it's less a problem than people think.
Yeah. And questions like that podcast I mentioned, again, the Creative Pen, again, so it's Joanna Penn. Her last name is legit Penn. That's just ridiculous that she turned into a writer and her last name's Penn. But anyway, this book has a lot of those kinds of things about looking at contracts and distribution rights for your audio book and how U.S. laws are different from laws in Europe on audiobooks. Like, there's a lot of nitty-gritty details out there that might not seem relevant to you maybe right now, but might be relevant to you later. So it doesn't hurt to start learning about those things. Cool?
I have one thing to add. From the bookstore perspective, when we're, I work for Buxton Books, when we're scheduling an author or working with a book club or something to get an author to come in and speak, the language that comes to us is her honorarium is $1,000. And often they'll say, but let us know if that doesn't work for you and we'll work something out. And so start with a number if you're getting to the point where you're making contributions to events or something like that. My honorarium is $500. However, this is a special event, so you let me know if we need to work something out.
Yeah, I think that's great. I haven't interacted as much with bookstores on an author angle, but I've done a lot of poetry readings and poetry events, and that is great wisdom. If I'm secretly hoping to make $300 in an event, I'll ask for $400, and then maybe they'll meet me in the middle, That doesn't hurt. Sir, did you have a comment or question?
I did.
Yeah.
I want to know about, does the book deal with writers' translation rights?
I know that this book talks about that. I know that is kind of an issue. Yeah, if you're thinking about getting your book translated. There's sometimes different international laws with those types of things. I've never had my poems translated into Spanish, so I don't know how that works personally, but I know I've seen some podcasts and books that have touched on that issue. So I don't claim to be an expert on that, but I know there is information out there. Okay, so we got 2 more practices, and we're going to kind of shift away from the outside world of publishing to a little bit more of an inner perspective. So again, these last 2 are going to kind of have to do with our personal inner lives, and they're not going to take up quite as much time. So I have an interesting image here for you. This is a screenshot of, I think, the second Hobbit movie. So this is a classic hero, Bilbo Baggins, confronting a classic, motif of mythology and fantasy, the dragon. This idea of a hero confronting a monster of some kind. Now, one of the interesting little details in this film, and you see this a lot pop up in, anytime there's like a dragon in like a fantasy story, they're often hoarding massive amounts of gold, right? Kind of seen this in like mythological stories before, which of course begs the question, like, what does a dragon need with gold, right? Do they need to go to the store and buy some things? Do they go to the dragon store? What does a dragon need gold for? Well, I think this was ancient people's way of trying to express like a psychological truth. Dragons represent fear. Dragons in mythology represent all the things we're scared of, all the things we don't want to look at, all the hard work we know we need to do to become the person we know we need to be, but we're scared to do that work. And underneath that dragon is treasure, is gold, is the good stuff. And so I want to propose that an essential part of the writing life is that we do the hard inner work of investigating our personal lives, our pasts, our pain, our wounds. We got to do that work. It'll form the foundation of our most meaningful writing. So, as I was saying, our most meaningful writing will obviously grow out of our inner work, confronting our fears, healing our wounds, and finding the treasure guarded by our inner dragons, speak mythologically. I want to give you kind of a few suggestions. I think we all kind of intuitively know this is true. I don't think I have to convince any of you that being more in touch with your emotional life and perhaps maybe your spiritual life is going to have profound ramifications upon the depth of your writing. I don't think that I have to prove that to you. But I want to give you kind of some practices and resources for maybe deepening your inner work. Solitude is a pretty core ingredient. one that, and that's a practice that all of us as writers have to engage in, right? I mean, we're having a wonderful moment of a community of writers, but there's a part of the writing life that's very solitary, right? Just you in your room or wherever it is you go. You got to find some quiet and some solitude to write. But for those of us who have busy lives and families, it can be difficult to find that kind of solitude. I think it's one of the hardest things for creative people to do is to form healthy boundaries for themselves, to give space in their lives for their creativity. I have a little bit of an easier time doing that these days. I happen to be a single guy without kids, but I was married for several years, and this is one of the biggest arguments in my marriage. On like a Sunday morning, I would be craving to spend a few hours, or just maybe like an hour, doing some writing and connecting with myself. And my ex-wife was ready for Sunday fun day and wanted to go out to brunch and wanted mimosas. And I would usually cave and give up my writing time because I was trying to make her happy. And that bred a lot of resentment and bitterness, and it was a big conflict in our marriage, right? Didn't mean to overshare there too much, but you probably relate. You probably have similar instances of like, you want to create some space in your life to prioritize your creativity, and a million things are popping up that are distracting you from doing that. So you got to work hard. You got to work out some compromises with the people in your life to say, hey, I love you, but leave me alone for the next hour. I got to write. And I still love you. It's hard, but you got to do it. I really am a huge advocate for what we might call contemplative practices. That's kind of an umbrella term where you could think of it like meditation, yoga, prayer, anything that helps you find some quiet, some time, some activities that help you go inwards a little bit. And yoga is, of course, also a great form of exercise. So it's not only kind of improving your peace of mind, it's also helping you be a little bit more fit and healthy. Creating a kind of a sacred space in your home. This is also probably a great place for you to do your writing. Kind of carving out, even if it's just a corner of a room, a place that like reminds you about your highest intentions. That's a little sanctuary of peace in your home where you can go and shut the door and have a little time to yourself. If you don't have a space like that in your home, like get one quick. Because it's probably driving you crazy not having that space. Paying attention to your dreams can be another powerful thing. This is something I've been incorporating recently into my life. I've been doing a lot of reading on Jungian psychology, and they have, within that kind of school of psychology, this fascinating work about how to kind of work with your dreams and analyze your dreams. Our dreams are so richly symbolic and full of all this kind of imagery. Sometimes it's weird, sometimes it can be powerfully insightful. Pay attention to your dreams. Keeping a dream journal can be like a really interesting way of seeing what's going on in your inner life. And then finally, getting out of your normal routines, maybe through something like travel or treating yourself to like a writer's retreat for a weekend, getting like a cabin out in the woods, or just getting out of your normal, ordinary life and giving yourself 48 hours to just dedicate to your writing life can be immensely enriching. Probably about 3 or 4 times this past year, I've gone up to Asheville and got a cabin. Derek and a good friend of ours, Lauren, we did kind of a writer's retreat weekend, and we spent the whole weekend writing, and we got into some shenanigans too, but we got some good writing done. So you can do that with other people or do it as a solitary practice. Any other ideas out there? What are some things you do to do some good inner work, to get in touch with what's going on in you? Any ideas out there? Sven?
I actually find that writing is a very, it can be very solitary, and I joined a choir this year, and I really have gotten a lot of inspiration in another creative outlet for my writing. So I always think that if you do painting or you sing or anything like that can really draw more creativity into your writing.
Yeah.
So not necessarily always writing, but getting inspiration outside of it as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, like having another creative practice that you don't have to take that seriously. Like, for a lot of us, maybe our writing is something, we want to get published, we want to be successful. Well, you might also just want to paint. And maybe you're a bad painter, but go be a bad painter. Like, it's great. Go play the guitar, and it sounds horrible, but there's something about just diving into those processes. You don't have to take it seriously. You're not trying to get famous, but enormously enriching things can come out of that. Yes, sir. Idea?
I'm sort of rediscovering the lost art of writing letters.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And the key thing is it's a rough draft. I won't send them always, but usually I come back to them, and sometimes I'll send a letter to somebody that I started 3 years ago, and it's kind of fascinating. I have a friend, we both do the same thing. We discover things we wrote, and then it could have been not even a letter, but just send it, because it kind of brings back memories. And
I love that. All right, we're running short on time, so I'm going to ask you to do your 3 goal setting exercise sometime later. Let's move on to our final practice. And we started with a poem. We're going to end with a short poem, a little short poem of mine. I got on a big kick maybe a year or two ago of doing these little Instagram poems. I would type them up on my typewriter, intentionally doing really short poems, this challenge of trying to write something really small. And this poem I included in my last poetry book. It's called Dead Poets, and it'll kind of lead us into this last theme. Don't talk to me of dead poets, the romantic starving artists, the beautiful suicides gone too soon. I want my poets above ground, their kitchens overflowing, and razor blades used only for shaving. Oh, thank you. Some of y'all know the poetry snap phenomenon. Thank you. So, let's get real for a moment. Artists, particularly writers, we're not really known for taking good care of ourselves. A lot of the kind of stereotype in our society of artist types is that we're depressed, we're broke, we're alcoholics, we're addicted to drugs, we're starving artists, right? And even if that was true, that wouldn't be so bad. But we do an even worse thing is that we have this idea in our culture that it's those problems, it's those demons that is what you need to be creative. That's the price you have to pay for being a genius, is being messed up and having a horrible family life and your life just being this crazy mess. I think we need to change that idea, because I think that concept has led to too many dead artists who died too soon, who never got the help they needed because their wounds were actually being praised instead of being healed. And I'd like to believe that writing is a part of a healing journey that we're all on. So I say, let's change these stereotypes that we don't take care of ourselves. This is actually something I'm doing in my online course. So it's 12 weeks of conscious creativity. It's based on this idea of this book, The Artist's Way. And all the writers I'm working with, along with setting goals like writing every day and doing some of the things, craft technique kind of things, I'm also getting them to set wellness goals. And I really think this is so important, that we take care of ourselves. And I'm just going to give you a few ideas. Obviously, there's lots of resources out there. I'm not like a nutritionist. I'm not like a personal trainer or anything like that. But I want to give you a few ideas of some things you could do to put on your calendar to take care of yourself that I think will actually enrich your creative lives immensely. A few ideas. Going for a walk. Actually, there's a long tradition of writers who are love going for walks. I mean, there's a great book out there called Daily Habits, and it's it's a whole book of just profiles of famous creative people, and it talks about their daily routines. I can't tell you how many of them, from famous composers and artists and writers, philosophers, who went out for a daily walk. It clears your head, it gets you moving. I go out for a run almost every day right after I do my writing. So I'll be engaged in writing, and I'm all up in my head and all this stuff, and it feels so good to like get outside, move. And what I kind of notice is that sometimes I'll get kind of stuck in my writing, and maybe I'm working on a poem and I don't know what that next line is going to be, or I don't know how to end it. And so I'll just leave it, I'll go out for a walk, and I'll get about halfway around the block, and I'll go, I got the next line. I got it figured out. I just needed to step away from my writing desk and get some fresh air. So going for a walk can be amazing. I already talked about maybe practicing yoga. Can't recommend that enough. Improving diet and nutrition. Could be just little things you do to be, and it just you'll feel so much better. Getting more sleep. I did not practice that last night because I was so nervous about today. I hardly slept. So I'm going to take a nice, amazing nap later on today to get caught up on my sleep. I almost hesitate mentioning this next thing in Charleston because we're such a drinking town. Maybe choosing to cut back on your alcohol use. Maybe like I'm only going to drink on the weekends or something like that. Just an idea. I don't know. You might think of some other ideas out there. I think we kind of need to kind of get to the end here, but I really want to make this case that taking good care of yourself will have immense value to your creativity. Like I said, I've been doing this routine of writing and then going for like a run or a bike ride every morning. That's how I start off my day. Every single day I write and then I exercise. And those two things make me a much, much happier person. So let's stop confirming this stereotype that artists are crazy people that are unhealthy and have all these horrible habits. Let's take better care of ourselves. I want to end with just two things. I want to give you a few additional resources about how to maybe stay in touch with what I'm doing at Contribute Your Verse. And then I wanted to give my buddy Derek Barry just a few minutes of your time. He's going to be doing a workshop at 11:30. It's going to be right here in this room. So I just want to give Derek an opportunity to kind of tell you what that workshop is like and really encourage a lot of you to stick around for that because it's going to be awesome. So here's other few things that we got going on at my company, Contribute Your Verse. So I do one-on-one writing coaching. So it's something that I deeply, deeply love. I work with authors, particularly on like their creative process. I help them, set goals like we set today, and then, help them stay accountable to those goals. I've been, helping people write entire novel manuscripts, self-published poetry books, like really start accomplishing some of their writing goals. I don't claim to be an expert on every facet of the publishing world, but I have a deep passion for working with writers. So if you need just like an accountability person, someone to be your cheerleader, someone to be a mentor of sorts for you, please let's start having a conversation about that. So I'm also doing this online course. I'm doing it with 5 writers right now over the next few months, but I'm starting it up again in January. It could be a perfect New Year's resolution to do this course. We write every day. We set priorities in terms of taking care of ourselves, and it's all based on that book, The Artist's Way. So it's a really great program. And then myself and Derek, we do a podcast about writing called the Contribute Your Verse podcast. We've got about, I think we're going to be coming out with our 22nd episode, I think this upcoming week. We have great conversations with lots of different types of writers, poets, novelists, comedy writers, hip-hop lyricists, all kinds of cool people, lots of different kinds of creatives. That's available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. And then the website for Contribute Your Verse is contributeyourverse.com. I'll be obviously sticking around for a while. I got business cards. I'd love to have a conversation with you about any of these things or what we talked about. And I just really want to help you start reaching some of those goals and putting some of these practices into your life. So if that's something you want to move forward on, and if I can help you in any way, I would love to be able to do that for you. Y'all, it has been an honor to be up here in front of you. Thank you so much for sharing this morning with me. So, thank you.